Yo, what's going on? It's the NOC, the Nerds of Color, and we are back with another ShoPowSho. It's your boy, Kuya P, aka Patrick Michael Strange, the Adobro, the Babinko boy, the leader of the Holla Holla homies, and the center gang of the NOC. And of course, I had to bring on the amazing Ates, the Sisig Supremes, the Dinaguan Destroyers. What up, Kataphorric and Viva Valentina? How are you, ladies?
Hey. What up? Doing good. Glad to be here.
Right. Excited. Happy to see you guys. We got another great one building off of our episode 50, where we celebrated gold and just, being good to be brown and being proud of who you are. All of that. We didn't have her with her the last time, but we have Leslie Alejandro coming back. But we also have her amazing sister, Dani DeJesus. We're going to celebrate the DeJesus sisters today and everything. They are amazing. Our first pair of sisters. Y'all ready to find out like the tea on that one, ladies?
I want to, yes.
Yes,
I'm excited.
With some siblings,
Fight.
All right, so let's bring them up on the screen. I'm going to bring it up to speaker view. I'm going to throw up the air horns. Let's celebrate Leslie Alejandro, Dani DeJesus. Come on, Italy. There we go. Air horns are just blasting off. We're excited. Thank you both for joining us to celebrate your amazingness and everything y'all are doing. And thank you for gold and what y'all did with that and just how powerful and so meaningful that it is. So again, thank you for that.
Thanks for having us. We're so honored that you're giving us a space such as this space to be able to talk about our trials and tributes for ourselves and for our community.
Hell yeah. So let me toss it over to Tina, who kicks us off with our questions. You ready, Tina? Let's do this.
Yeah. So we always want to know, are y'all sisters? Where are you from? Where are you really from?
Leslie, take it away.
We are sisters, true sisters through and through. We grew up in West Covina, California. And in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And our parents still live in the house that we grew up in. Wow. My Dani now, she was living in Hawaii for about 12 and a half years and teaching Filipinos in the island of Maui at Maui High before she came back to start this production company with my husband and I. I've been living in the west side of Santa Monica since 2004. So that's kind of a little bit of our roots. Dani was on the west side first, though. After she graduated UCLA, she moved to Venice Beach, California, and then I kind of followed suit. So she was the OG West Coast, West Beach Coast kind of person. So.
Okay. I'm gonna bring it back a little bit. I'm gonna bring it back because we kind of got you took the question. We try to do a play off of that question because it's kind of racially tinged a little bit when we as POCs get that. So that's why we like to play off of it. But I'm gonna start with the seed, and that's how I kind of bounce off of her question. So before we celebrate you guys, we want to know a little bit about your parents, how they came here. And because I think for all of us, and I don't know if y'all are parents as well, but I have a child. To me, that child is the manifestation of my hopes, my dreams, my everything. We want to salute your parents real quick to see if you know a little bit about their love story. So if we can celebrate their love story and what of them came into you a little bit, what kind of traits that you took from them. So let's, if either of you know their love story a little bit, to maybe share how they met and then when y'all came into the picture for them.
It's a really interesting story. It's so funny just because you think about the way that the messages of getting to know people for a long time and getting to, really develop a relationship with your partner. Our parents, they kind of move things a little bit quickly, which is all good too, but they are still married. Leslie, you are now, I always base it on my sister's age. That's how I know how long my parents have been together. So
I'm 47.
So they're 48 years, right? And they both came to the Philippines independently with their families in the 70s. My dad came with an architectural engineering degree. My mom came with an accounting degree. And with her brothers and sisters, they all settled.
Filipino?
Filipino careers, but we know this about immigration, right? That's when they were accepting all the professionals. So all of their siblings, except their ones that were still in high school and elementary school, all had professional degrees. And they came, they met independently in their mid-20s.
By a dressmaker.
By
Wow.
a dressmaker.
Yeah, a mutual friend whose mom's dressmaker, I believe, and introduced them at a party.
And they were, as my mom says it, courting for
Yeah, I love that. Yep.
We call that talking to.
There you go. There you go. Only with her sisters present or her parents present. It's very, very conservative. For 5 months, they only were dating for about 5 months before they got married, which is kind of incredible.
Well, they got married 10 months into. I think they dated to marry him, and then they got married at 10 months after they met. Our dad is from Manila, and our mom is from Makati, and has a what is it called? Visayan. Our grandma is Visayan. But that's kind of the story. That's about the extent of, we are learning a lot more about where they came from, who they are, and what their story is in the Philippines. And it's been so interesting for us. And Tina, how you said, where are you from? And we can talk about this a little later, but it segues a little bit, that we can bring up later into the docuseries that Dani and I have been working on called Where Are You From? And so, but yeah, so we're because of this journey that we've been on in this docuseries, learning more about who our parents were and where they came from has really been enlightening for us, because I don't think it's things that our parents' generation really talked about to our generation, because they wanted us, and because they were like so ingrained in their Western mentality too. For us not really to know. Our dad didn't want us to use spoons, or our mom tried to talk to us in Tagalog, but our dad really wanted us to speak English. And I kind of picked up a lot of
an accent.
Yeah.
Pardon?
And to not have an accent.
Yeah, and to not have an accent. And so I picked up Tagalog, and I'm able to understand. It didn't get passed down to Dani, but she's kind of been learning it all on her own in these last several years, which has been pretty incredible.
That is cool. Yeah. That's dope. I love it. That's why we asked this question now and kind of integrate it with that lead off question, because it kind of helps format and just becomes a therapy session as well. I'll say that, because it just makes you think back and reflect. And that's what we want to do and celebrate, because that is part of our journey as we explore your journey. So it's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So they met, fell in love here in the States. And again, the U.S. was pilfering our best, and that's how we came. Let's be honest, because there's a whole thing I'm doing as well on colonization stuff aspects that we're going to dig into that in future episodes. But our best and brightest, and that's who they are. So let's give them their shine. They met, fell in love, and then you came into the picture first, Leslie.
Yes.
And then followed by Dani.
Yes. I was born a year later. They were still living in a little apartment in LA proper, and then bought their first home in El Monte, California. And then Dani was born, and immediately they moved into the house that they live in now, that Dani and I grew up in West Covina until we left after high school.
Awesome. I love it. So let's talk about those early years. So your sister was born growing up. Did they share any stories about the Philippines? What was life like growing up in California and them being immigrants? And, I'm not sure what kind of jobs, they were our best and brightest. So like, were they home because they were always constantly working? Like, what was it like growing up?
It was, we talk about this all the time in terms of just like, I was actually asking my mom about this recently. We went on a camping trip down in San Diego. And so we had about 4 hours, 2 hours back and forth just to chat and talk. And I was asking her, and remind me, how long did it take you to get to work? Because I have all of these ideas and all of these memories. And as you all know, we create these stories in our head, and I have to check myself constantly. Like, is that really true? Or is that the story that I'm telling myself? Our mom, for the most part, she worked 29 years for the city of Duarte as the assistant deputy finance director. So she was the lead accountant of a small municipality, which is just freaking bomb, right? The more that I think about it, and we used to spend a lot of time there. Like, she ruled that place, and she was the one of the main people that helped that city function, because she dealt with all of their accounting, all of their finances. And she worked her butt off. So she was doing 10-hour days on Monday to Thursday. She would leave at 7 a.m, wouldn't come home till 7 p.m. And then she had Fridays off. And so that was kind of her schedule. Our dad, he worked for an engineering firm. And Leslie, jump in, because again, like, sometimes I think I tell myself stories and I'm not quite too sure.
No, it's all true so far.
Okay. He worked for an engineering firm, and he was there. And I remember an architect firm too. He was also, like, there was a big architect table.
He did architecture and engineering, but he never quite told us exactly what he did. I never seen his work. We know that our dad is an incredible artist. Like, he can draw.
Oh, wow.
I picked up my penmanship from him in the block. That's so Filipino too, but the block lettering, when I capitalize everything, that's kind of what I picked up from him. But it was very, their generation was very, we are the parents, you are the kids. You only know on a need to know basis. And that's kind of, there was no integration between what was happening in their adult lives and what was happening in ours. So, going back to and seeing the relationship I have with my son, who's 13 years old, it's so different, because I remember being 13 and thinking my parents were the oldest people in the whole world. And I'm like, I hope it doesn't think that way about me, because I don't feel that way. But I'm even older. The age difference between my son and I are older than my mom and I. So my mom and myself are 30 years apart, where my son and I are 34 years apart. So I am definitely a lot older than that. But yeah, it's a very, thinking about what it was like, they were very strict. We grew up in West Covina, which was pretty conservative. We grew up very conservative. Our mom was especially very religious, Catholic. Grew up being in church all the time, not knowing why we had to stand and read out of this paper book that didn't look anything like the Bible. We had to, it was very similar to the other Filipinos that were around us, because we saw them at church, and we, now, around the area that our parents live in is Little Manila. So that's the area that they live in out in West Covina. So, you can kind of get an idea of how Filipino it was for us growing up as well. Very strict household. Dani, you can come in anytime.
I want to know, Leslie, what kind of sister was Dani? And Dani, what kind of sister was Leslie?
And you're going back. You said it was going to be a therapy session, didn't you?
I know, jeez. Okay, Oprah.
This kind of ties into what Leslie was saying about with the strictness, because I think what had happened is that my parents, they were immigrants coming from the Philippines. They were conservative. They were still, as we know, immigrant parents are trying to understand how to raise American children with these Filipino principles and ideas and values. And they're getting mixed messages, and it's confusing. But for Leslie, she was the firstborn. And so she was the one that got the brunt of it. And then when I came along, I think I was the one that was then going to be their, how should I say it? Their
golden child.
A little bit. I was the one child that I had to tag along. But I actually wanted to tag along, because I really, really wanted to be. Leslie was so cool. She is so cool, right? So cool. And I wanted to be her, everywhere that she wanted to be. But she saw me as the tattletale, because that's what my parents were actually, and that's what they got me to do, is like, you need to follow your sister everywhere she goes and tell us everything that she does. And Leslie was like, oh, just leave me alone.
It's funny to kind of think back and see why the relationship, because it was all perspective. It really wasn't Dani. It was just my perspective on who she was. I'm the first to say that I was very jealous of their, the way they never loved us any different. I know that for a fact. I know they loved us hardcore, exactly the same, anything that they would do for us. But because Dani was their, I tease her about the golden child thing, but it was true, because she was not only academically like amazing, she listened to them, and she was their baby, so, and I was a little bit of what they used to call me was the black sheep. And I was always exploring my, I was always exploring my independence, which they did not like. I was always exploring my creativity, which they did not like. That they actually, it was very strange. You know how Filipinos are. It's like, you got to sing the best and be the best. And you got to, when it comes to performing, and you got to perform in front of the titas and the titos, and you've got to, make us all proud. But don't do that as a profession, and you've got to do something else, because that's not going to make you any money, So I kind of got a little bit of that. Like, they gave me guitar and singing lessons, and and piano, both of us piano lessons, and they encouraged us to do those kinds of things. And when I joined a singing group or a band, my mom would always take me to my practices and stuff like that, but didn't understand when I wanted to pursue it full time. Where Dani, it was always like, that's how parents are, Filipino parents are, especially, where they will pit each other against each other, compete against each other to kind of rile up the other person, so that they would want to be, kind of motivate them to be better. And it was always—
What's the age difference?
Only 3 years.
You guys? Only a year?
3 years.
3 years. Okay. 3 years. And then is it just you two?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. No, I totally feel that, because me and my brother, we are just shy of 2 years apart. So a little less than 2 years apart. And the only reason why I did like AP classes and dual enrollment classes, and I played sports, and I did, after school activities and started clubs and everything, was because he was doing it. And my parents were like, oh, he can do everything. And I was like, oh, I can do everything too. And it was like you could tell, like, they didn't do it on purpose, but they were like, yeah, this is the standard. You should do this. And then I was like, I should do that. Yeah. So I totally understand that.
It was opposite for us. It was always like, your sister, she's getting straight A's. I'm like, wait till she gets to my grade, it's harder. And then she's like, she's still getting straight A's, and she's in your grade now. Wait till she gets to this grade, it'll get harder. And they're like, no, she's still getting straight A's. And then I was like, well, I'm a different person, and I want to do everything different than she does. So it was a little bit of that kind of contrast too,
But I think kind of what we're getting to as well, and it sounds like you all had this experience, the older that we get and the more that we start to see our parents for what they might have been experiencing at this age and during that time period raising us, they were just trying to figure it out. And then I will argue that immigrants have a whole different layer of that as well. It's not just raising two girls, and at this time teenage girls in Los Angeles, and they're concerned for our safety, but they also have these values and principles from a culture that they're holding on to, but yet they're somewhere else now that, like Leslie is saying, like we just want to be with our friends, and we wanted to party, and we wanted to do this and do that. And our parents are just like, no way, especially for Leslie. By the time it was a little bit different for me, but especially for Leslie. Yeah.
So when it came time for you guys to like choose your careers, go to school, what were their expectations there, and like what did you guys end up choosing to do?
You go first.
So it's crazy, because I still feel it. I since I'm an educator, and I'm always just curious how we go about choosing our careers. And especially in today's day and age, now people have multiple careers. So what are those things that lead you to whatever it is that you're going to do when you grow up, right? And for me, I've always known that I loved kids and I love working with kids. And I also loved math and science. And so being a doctor was going to be like the natural thing. And of course, I wanted to buy my parents a house and take care of them. So being a pediatrician was my thing. So I went to UCLA as pre-med and was a bio major. And then I saw people studying OChem. That was 4:00 in the morning and having no like, and here's the thing, like I was under my parents' house and thumb for 18 years at that point with a 12 o'clock curfew the whole entire time and, racing down the 10 freeway to get home. We'll talk about my dance crew from performance and things like that. So by the time I got to UCLA, I was like, I don't want to be studying as much. All I did was study in high school, right? I wanted to have fun. I was like, ooh, I don't think I could do that if I'm going to be a doctor. So I changed my major eventually many times, picked up psychology and political science, thought I was going to go into the FBI, went to Washington, D.C. and interned there as a probation officer. And eventually, I started seeing, okay, Dani, you're heading more and more and more to social services, social work. What is that? And then it wasn't until I graduated that I did a volunteer trip in Ghana in West Africa. And originally I was there to work with the kids to create a play because I loved storytelling. And then I joined a friend at a local school and I got in front of a group of kids and I just started teaching. And I was like, oh, this is something, whoa, what's going on here? What's happening? And realized that I was pretty good at it. And the kids responded to me. Leslie knows this, like kids and I, we just have a very interesting dynamic and relationship.
Their language.
It's just exactly. It just is a natural thing, which I'm so grateful for. But then telling my parents that I was going to be, I mean, y'all know, like, okay, that was something else. So that took me a while but that didn't happen right away. So after I graduated, then I got an alumni from UCLA saying, what are you going to do? And I said originally, hey, I think I'm going to be a cop in Chicago. And he said, what are you talking about? Do you remember this, Les?
Of course, I threw that in Mom's face.
Yeah. And so he had me meet with him, and he was a manager for talents. And he said, I think you have a career in entertainment. Because at that point, I'd been doing a lot of things at UCLA that was revolving around productions and event planning and entertainment.
For fun though, right?
Exactly, for fun. All of these things that you have no idea how it all adds up until it adds up. And
she was the president of the Alumni Association, like
student alumni association,
like of UCLA. So that for fun.
The golden child.
So now you understand. You understand who I was being compared to this whole time. Jesus.
No. I mean, UCLA was the prime of my life. It was amazing. I always say that my education was for fun stuff that I did, because of course you're learning from the books, but it was the relationships, it was the organizations, it was the leadership that I was learning. Those are still all the people that I'm connected with. But yes, and so then this manager, he sent out my resume. Next day I get 4 interviews. One of them was at CBS Productions, and I started working there. And the executive producer, he also was a UCLA alum. He knew me from this camp that I worked at where I wrote and produced the shows. So I joined his production company. And then I worked there until I moved to Maui and then became a teacher. So it's been a little bit like this. But all along the way, my parents are saying, now, what happened to you being a doctor? You buying us a house? Like, how does this work? But to be honest, they are and continue to be super supportive. Yeah, on the same road trip with my mom the other day, and I'm 44 years old, and my mom just said, that even though you and Leslie are grown, that we'll always be there for you too. And it's like, oh man, yes, mommy, I know, I love you so much. Yeah. So our parents, they have again these ideas and these expectations of what their children should be, and that we can unpack how that relates to our Filipino culture. But at the end of the day,
that's definitely one of the jokes we make is like, they want you to be a doctor, nurse,
yes,
engineer, architect, accountant. Like that's, and you mentioned it earlier, like such a Filipino career.
Yeah.
And it was a different upbringing for us. We know, the research, again, we started kind of like the thesis of our docuseries was based on our own experience in West Covina. And West Covina was a very middle class kind of upbringing for us. And but we know what existed were also the Filipinos who didn't come through that professional wave, and their humble beginnings coming into a country that didn't actually necessarily accept them either, or who were, especially mothers who were single parents, and then growing up in the hi-fi district and what that was. So understanding our privilege was something we didn't really understand until we realized there was another side of the coin when it came to the kind of community that we have here in Los Angeles. So, we did have working parents that both worked, that we always had to get picked up or dropped off and stay with other people. And, we didn't get the home cooked meals because our mom worked all the time. And when she was tired and comes home at night, like 8:00 at night, she doesn't want to cook. So our diet, my diet.
Junior.
Oh, Arby's, El Pollo Loco. I'm like,
Did you have any aunties or uncles that lived nearby or no? So is it mainly like church family too that helped out?
A little bit,
Okay.
spread out throughout LA. So we're in the San Gabriel Valley. A lot of our family was in the San Fernando Valley. We had that probably, everything was like 20, 45 minutes, but with traffic, an hour and a half away. But yeah, West Covina is a pretty Filipino heavy community. But we weren't allowed to like just hang out at people's homes. We weren't allowed to use public transportation. So when people talk about, using the bus, I'm always like, I don't understand what you're saying. Like, that's a foreign language to me. How do you take a bus? And I get all nervous and anxious about it.
Yeah.
We weren't allowed to walk anywhere. Brian Apin's house, 6 houses down from our cul-de-sac. We lived in a cul-de-sac, people. So like there wasn't anywhere that you could go. But if our dad couldn't see Brian Apin's, us past Brian Apin's house, and like that was it. That was our boundaries. So we weren't like hanging out with friends so much per se. More again, Leslie, and then by the time I came around, because then I joined a dance crew.
The dance crew.
Was that in high school or college? The dance crew.
High school.
Okay, so let's keep it there in the high school. Let's get a little bit of that, and then I want to hear Leslie's college story as well. But tell us about this dance crew.
Oh,
he jumped in it.
Oh, it's so crazy because. I remember when I was 12 years old, I was watching, it was at one of Leslie's performances. It was, you were singing somewhere, Les, and then they had a hip hop dance crew come on stage. And I remember just watching saying, man, I think I could do that. And Leslie said, we were in dance classes, piano classes, music is a part of our life. Our dad sings all the time in our house. And I loved to dance. And so then I remember saying I could do that. I met some girls who were 2 years older than me in high school. And they asked if I just wanted to join their dance crew, Ladies in Motion, LIM. This was back in the day. And I always say, if my parents knew what type of dances we were doing, they would rip their lid. And I was 12, which trips me out.
With the little booty shorts and a little crop top.
And the chiffon shirts, Les. The chiffon shirts and the patent leather shoes.
Contempo casuals.
Yeah. And then by the time I got to high school, we formed another dance group, and we were named Zodiac, and we were performing everywhere and anywhere, every single weekend. This is what I'm saying. Like, my parents, they knew dance meant everything to me. So I was practicing in my friends' garages. They would come to our garage and practice. And then we would do the weddings. I don't understand how people who are getting married would let like 14-year-olds dance at their wedding.
What is that about?
I would never let 14-year-olds dance at my wedding.
Wearing booty shorts.
And booty shorts. Like what? Why were we there? It's so crazy. And then we would perform at debuts. And then when the club scene came up, we were performing at all the clubs. All of the the shows when they would have all of the major dance crews on there. And I was like 15, 16 years old, and I was managing our dance crew for the most part, dealing with promoters and talking and coordinating. And the number one thing I had to say was, I need to be home by midnight. So we need to, that's my curfew. And I have to insist that we be one of the first ones to perform, because I'm out of there by 11:30 at the latest. Because if I get home at 12:01, I am in major trouble. So yeah, there'd be like 6 girls in our Kuya CRX, and he'd be going 100 miles an hour on the freeway. Dani's got to get home. Dani's got to get home right now. So that was the high school life for us, was just these parties and these performances. And then this will be part of, like, what Leslie and I are going to talk about. But yeah, then when the gang stuff really started, making this move, it made those things very not fun and very dangerous, and all of the drive-bys, all of the shootings, all of the knife fights, just at some point I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yo, I feel that. And because now that knowing earlier that we're the same age, same year and everything, like I was in a crew too. So I know what kind of music you were dancing to. So that's hilarious, because I know that's what I was dancing to. And then then when like gang stuff started happening, you got to kind of back off from that. But I love that, because like I can recall all that, and that just brought back some memories. So thank you for that.
Kuya P, are you from LA as well?
No, I was raised all over because my parents were military. But I was born in San Diego, and I would go back because I have family in the Bay Area in San Diego, National City, represent. So I have Cali fam, and I'm East Coast because being a military kid. But yeah. So definitely. So Leslie, you were singing. So was that because church choir type stuff, or was that in school, or a little bit of both?
A little bit of both. I had always done music. Started singing when I was really young, and just really enjoyed it, and I loved it. That was my thing, and that's kind of what I continued to do. I joined my first professional band, but it was like, one of those Filipino top 40s bands when I was 15 years old, because they lost their lead singer. So I had to audition for it. And I did that till I was about 20, I want to say 22, 23 years old, in the same band, but they were a lot older than I was. They were a few of them were in their 40s. It was me. And then my friend who was the keyboard player, he was maybe a couple of years older than me. But I was the youngest. And so I didn't go to my prom. I didn't go to, a couple of the formals because I had gigs. So, we performed at the weddings and the Filipino associations and the, Christmas parties and New Year's parties. I spent almost 10 years without celebrating New Year's with my family, because we did a lot of the New Year's parties.
So you were kind of like a professional, like for real.
Yeah, I guess. Wow. So we had gigs on the weekends, and things like that. At 16, I joined a singing group called She that was managed by Adobo's managers. So we did a lot. We were singing a lot with Adobo when I was 16 years old, and they were a lot older than me. The girls were a lot older than me too. I was 16, and the other 3 were 23. 24 and 31 at the time. And so, that one was when we went full on professional, and we opened up for the Commodores at the Long Beach Sports Arena. And this is in the 90s, remember, guys? So it's a long time ago. And that was, for me, that was my calling. That's what I always wanted to do. But like Dani said, parents were always in your head about what you wanted to do. And my mom, always said, you love to argue, so maybe you should be a lawyer.
That's on the bingo sheet too, lawyer.
Right. So, that's what I went into. I went to Cal Poly Pomona because I thought that I just wasn't as studious, and I was between that and Fullerton. I didn't have a lot of options because I didn't have the best GPA, and then also because of what is it called? What is the ethnic assistance that helps you get into?
Oh,
what is it called?
Affirmative action?
Affirmative action. helped me get into college. Because I remember sitting there going, God, my grades weren't that great. How am I in this school? Because I was sitting in it was like orientation, and I was looking around and I was like, oh, because everybody was brown or Asian or Black. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. But I started in kind of like Dani. I thought that I went in I switched it around. I started in psychology, always had criminal justice as a minor, thinking I was going to go to law school eventually. Did not like psychology and went into philosophy and loved it so much, and continued on with philosophy for a few years until I realized that I didn't want to go to law school. So that's where I came to my crossroads of like, okay, what am I going to do if I end up finishing school and with this degree? My only two choices were to teach or write a book, which I just wasn't interested in or didn't think I'd be good at either of them. So I quit and I left my junior year in college, and that was the extent of my college education, which my parents were not happy about. Look at Tina's face; she was like, "Oh no!"
Yeah, I was like, that was my next question. I was like, "Oh, how did they?"
They were not happy with it, but at the same time, I was in several different bands. They saw the stuff that I had done. They knew that I was active and really writing a lot, recording a lot. Doing all of that. I moved to LA. I finally moved to LA and bit the bullet and signed with an indie label with a group that I was in at the time. Ended up in another band, which we signed with DreamWorks when DreamWorks used to have a music division. And we did like a mini tour here and there, opened up for Paul Weller at the Wiltern, almost went on tour with the Gorillas and with Billy Corgan. It was a really fun time, and it was a hard time. It was hard also for me, as I was simultaneously with this other band, kind of doing more like backup leads, I guess you could say. Our band was kind of like felt like B-52s ish, but was more influenced by the Stones and by the Beatles, and like more of a 60s kind of punk pop band with a bunch of Canadians that I was in, and trying to do my own thing, but as a woman of color, was not easy because that wasn't widely accepted, nor was at the time there were even major female. I was into rock. So it wasn't a lot of females in the rock spectrum of, I think barely, I think it was Shirley Manson, who was the first person to get on K-Rock, or first woman to get on K-Rock. And that was my goal, was to be up there too. And it just was a very, very difficult time. And, as a woman of color, trying to do her thing at the time. So, ended up getting married, and having a family. And it was when I was pregnant was when I came to another crossroads of like, what else am I going to do with my life? Because I can't tour anymore. I have a family now, and, that's kind of where so many things kind of happened on that course from that point in my life in my mid 30s to where I am now. And I went from being, doing hair and makeup for editorials and celebrities and making my money that way, and just not loving it. It's one of those things that Filipinos are also kind of multi-hyphenates and can be good at a lot of things creative. Oh yeah. But kind of find it and do it as a career wasn't a thing. And I always say I'm left brain, right brain equal, and kind of went into operational stuff in publishing, and became executive director for Celebrity and Fashion magazine for a little while, kind of veered into there, and then found photography because I knew I needed to stay creative, because I stopped being creative for a while and was just really doing all editorial stuff, which was kind of driving me crazy after a while. And then did photography for a while, which I still do. And then from there, found directing, because I wanted to tell stories with not just stills, but, moving pictures. And Dani and I reconnected on a documentary that we're still working on to this day while she was in Maui. And the more my husband and I talked about what our goals were and what we wanted to do, the more we realized that we wanted to form a production company. And that's when we got Dani involved. And through that, I found directing because I started taking classes at UCLA Extension in directing and started off as directing documentary, and then wanted to make sure that I knew the lingo and what I was doing. And so then I started taking scripted classes as well and fell in love with that. And then that's kind of where I ended up with directing, started shooting short films and music videos, as you guys know. And that's kind of how I found directing. I mean,
I love that.
It all makes sense to me from where I started. It used to confuse me of like, the imposter syndrome of not knowing that I started, that people are doing what I'm doing now, but started right out of high school. And, should I have done that? And where would I be if I'd done it that way? But the knowledge that I attained from music, from touring, from publishing, and into where I'm doing now, and my visuals and my strength in visuals and music with the visuals, I definitely am confident with and know that it came from all of that entire past that I just mentioned right now.
I love that. I love it.
That's great. I had a quick question.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, you followed your passions where it served you, and then you followed it where it led you. And like, I think that's a misconception that you have to find the one thing that you're passionate about and then make a career about it, and that's all you get to do. Whereas like, you can have a passion in photography, and then you're like, well, now it's time for directing. And it's not that, that was the wrong passion. It was just that now you're moving on to something else, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No, and I realized that also when I was in class, and I was so nervous that I was going to be the youngest one. I mean, the oldest one, not the youngest one. I was going to be the oldest one in class, which I kind of was one of them, but I realized how much more I knew than everybody else. Like, I knew a lot more than everybody else. And I actually, kind of thrived in the environment of the way that I presented my projects and the short film I presented and what I did, because I was very, I'm also very particular about my visuals. I'm very particular about the way that I see things and envision things. And I was able to translate that into the work that I presented. And it gave me the confidence to know that I do belong in this space, whether or not, because, you can have people who go to school forever and still not be great. I'm not saying that that's like, that's a negative thing. And, I just know that there's also people that it's kind of ingrained in them as well. And, I'm all about understanding and educating myself, and in what I know. My sister is such an advocate for education and learning and knowing, she's a sponge. And so I try to pick up a lot of that into what I do. But, like, you could see the two different styles of the way that Dani and I came to where we are. And I think both stories are valid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kat.
Oh no, you're totally, that's actually a really good segue, because as you were talking about these skills that you gain from all of these these stops on your life journey have all kind of accumulated in things that you are going to be passionate about and you're going to pursue in the future, right? Like everything, it all comes together. And that also applies for the bad as well as the good. And so you did sort of briefly touch upon, being a woman of color, being Filipina, definitely has an impact on your reception and your opportunities, I think, especially it may be getting better now, but certainly not so much even very recent past. So could each of you talk maybe a little bit about some challenges that you faced?
Do you want to go first, Dani?
Yeah, I think, I don't know necessarily it's a challenge. I think one of the things that we talk about often is just in terms of who we see as our role models, and who we see and how we didn't see a lot of people that look like us in the different positions that we are in currently. And we absolutely believe that representation matters. We believe that it's important to see people that have had our journey and our specific, not even our specific stories, but similar stories, you know, doing the things that we're doing. And at the same time too, I mean, I lead my life by example. I always have. It's like, I can't help but be who I am. And I'm open that if I'm living my true life and my authentic life, then that's also going to be inspiring other people as well. So it's the languaging around it is, I would say, a little bit newer for me, because when I was doing my thing, I was just doing my thing. I wasn't like, oh, who am I not seeing? And I need to be this person. And because I'm this color, I need to show up more. I will say, though, that I was blinded to a lot of those issues and those concerns. And I am checking my privilege, too, because there were a lot of things that I think I had more access to, and it came easier to me, not because of who I am, but because of where I lived and my parents' income and things like that, that I'm recognizing more and more and more. And luck, you know, luck plays a big factor in a lot of this too. So I think just some of the challenges is for, especially again, like, you know, you all know this, I'm an educator. So I always look to the next generation. Like, what is it that I would like the kids of today to see and to feel and to experience and to know? And so much of that is that they can do and be anything that they want to do and be, and that there isn't, from what you all can hopefully gather, there's not one linear path for that. And I think culture and society always tells us, like you were saying, Tina, you have to find this one thing and you have to do it now, and it has to be perfect and it has to be right, and off you go. And if you don't, then you're a failure, right? We're seeing, especially you're talking to two women in their 40s, women of color in their 40s, like this is a brand new chapter in our life, and we're here for a while. Like we're going to be doing this, and we're going to be doing it well, and we're going to be kicking butt, and we're in our 40s. And, you know, so that whole idea of like, it's too late to do something different or too new, I don't subscribe to that whatsoever, right? It is really just about, like you were saying, finding your passions, finding your joy. For us, and you know, Leslie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I could speak for you. It's about making a positive impact on the world. You know, we know that our stories are gonna do that through entertainment, through creating conversation, through introducing new perspectives. But in terms of like the challenge, I would just say is, yeah, we need to hear. We didn't hear our stories growing up, right? And we didn't know that our stories were something that needed to be told. And so now, as Leslie's kind of alluded to, in the last couple of years, we're all about, wait a minute, how come these stories then aren't on everybody's front page? And how come me as a Filipino educator know nothing about the Philippines, know nothing about my Filipino culture, you know, and I'm done pointing fingers, but I'm trying to figure out like, where do we go from here? What do we need to do now? Okay, I'm done.
My story is slightly different, and also the same, you know, understanding the opportunities that our parents were able to get for us. And I understand that privilege too. And knowing what they tried to give us through our education and those type of opportunities were definitely there. But because I was on a path to media and through media and entertainment, it was different for me. I did feel the difference. I am, I just haven't sang in so long. So, but I've always been a big soul singer, and I've veered in from soul and wanting to do like combined soul and rock, you know, together. So, but there was no place for either side that looked like me in the 90s. And I'm talking early 2000s too. And so I did struggle with that. And one of my bands, we had a gig and we played a lot of funk. And, you know, Filipinos, we can funk it out, you know, like that is the thing we do. And this is our upbringing. This is, I think, a little bit of what our community has been dealing with when it, or kind of having a little pushback with because it's not our music, does it really belong to us? Which we never claimed it does, but it was part of who we are and our upbringing. And it is what is, you know, kind of ingrained in our lives and in our, and who we are as kids, especially, you know, like Kuya P knows growing up in the 90s, hip hop was our thing. And it was like our, the way that we talk, the way that we move, the way we can dance, like we know that we are second to best when it comes to soul and funk and jazz and all that different kind of stuff. Right. So I'm claiming that. Sorry. I'm just claiming it.
I love it. Claim that.
I'm just claiming that. But so then here I was in this band and we were playing funk and we performed at an all black club and we got booed off stage because we were not black. And it's not like that anymore because I think our African-American brothers and sisters are definitely accepting us who we are now and everything. But back then they were trying to make a stamp in their world. And I think that that's what the US has done with all of the communities and kind of pitted us against each other to figure out what space that they belong in. And, it's not been an easy road to get to this idea of, the whole community rising up together. Right. So I was in that space and then I went into rock and, rock is being led by white people. So that wasn't an easy thing to kind of come into also. And so I did feel that a little bit and felt where my place was a little bit in the mix of all of that. Then when I started working behind the scenes, that's where it was a little bit different because I wasn't trying to be a face of anybody or a face of anything. And I could get on the phone with publicists and people and pitch ideas and pitch what's not. And it didn't matter. I could send emails and no one knew who I was or what I looked like. And then those opportunities changed again. So, but like Dani said, we also have that privilege of understanding how we know how to communicate and because and how to communicate with people outside of our community. And so there's my privilege too of moving forward to that space. There's also not a whole lot of Filipino photographers that kind of shoot at the level that where I'm at or even beyond, which is in advertising and, like the big money. So, there's still space for us to grow in that community as well. And in directing and in filmmaking, there, we see them coming out. We see Diana Paragas. We see, Marie Hamora, and we see, more Asian women coming up, the Chloe Zhao's of, the world are coming up and being recognized. But we didn't have that, those role models growing up. I didn't see anybody that I thought that, I could probably be a director when I was young. I get it now. Like I said earlier, I understand why it took me this long or this path for me to be in this space, because if I tried to do it back then, I would have probably came, to those doors, those closed doors that I did in music. Not saying that I couldn't have done it or that I could have done it. I don't know. Yeah. I took a different path, but if I tried to do it back then, I feel like my opportunities and my voice and my confidence, let's be real, would have been different back then as it is now. Now we do see the space. Ava DuVernay, when she came to the forefront, that's what blew my mind. She blew my mind, even though I knew there were many Black women directing before her, but they were not in the limelight like she did. And when they gave her that space and that platform to talk, I was like, whoa, she's the closest to look like me than anybody else I've seen that's been in the limelight, So yeah, representation does matter, and knowing what you can and can't do by seeing somebody else do it does matter. And that's kind of like why I'm confident in the path I am and where I am right now, and why it took me this long to get here, because, that's just the story of not only what was available for me, but also, let's be real, with my own confidence to get to this space.
Yo, I love that. I just want to say thank you for sharing all that, because a lot of my journey has felt those stumbling blocks. That's kind of like why I'm hosting now, because I was an actor but wasn't getting the roles. So I got behind the camera to make roles. You know what I'm saying? So we make things happen. We find alternative paths on our journey. So let's celebrate where we are now going with this journey. I want to take it back to we stopped with Dani with the intersection of her going to Hawaii with their education. how you, Dani, came from Hawaii now to LA with Leslie, and we're forming Alejandro Films. We're doing, we're now going to create these documentaries, and where we're building now into the new projects you have coming up. But I want to start back with you, Dani, because you left us off with your story in regards to going to Hawaii. What brought you back? Was your sister Leslie begging you to come back because you love each other so much? I want you here. I need you. Can we start back with you from Hawaii?
Yeah, no, Hawaii was supposed to be a 5-year, not experiment, but a 5-year experience. And it was supposed to be me just having moved somewhere else. I was born and raised in LA, went to school in LA, worked 6 years at a production company in LA. And everyone that I was meeting was not from LA. And I was like, I want that story. I want to have picked up and moved somewhere else and create a community. And so then that's when I moved to Hawaii. And when I was trying to think of what I was going to do out there, just the teaching thing became a natural find. But what's interesting is that just like we're all talking, somehow all of your interests and your talents, they all seem how to intersect. And that was a beautiful thing. So I became a social studies teacher, and I got to stand up in front of students and talk story all the time and make history come alive and make political science and economics, which isn't easy, come alive. And that I found my passion there. But I always knew that I had a deep desire to continue to educate through storytelling on other levels. And I was the director of development at a production company in LA before I moved to Hawaii. And my favorite thing was working with writers, was everyone jamming in a room, coming up with ideas, breaking story. And at that time, right, those were certain stories that we were telling. And then when Leslie talked to me about a project that she had in mind, a photography project that she had had been called to pursue, someone had suggested to her that she'd take the photography project and make it and film it and to make it into a documentary project. And so she said, I think this might be something that we can do together. And for every break that I was on when I was teaching, I would come back to come back to LA. And that was my vacay, was hanging out with my sister, and we would just start to break down this documentary. And then I would go back to work and go back to Maui. And when I teach, that's where my whole soul, my whole life, my whole time and effort is. So it was really hard to continue moving our documentary project forward when I was still living in Maui. And at some point, y'all know, like, Maui is home. Maui has my soul. So when the conversation started happening around, well, we have this idea too. What do you think about this? And we have this idea. What do you think about this? And we started to just come up with all of these different ideas with my brother-in-law, Kevin. It just became more and more obvious that the three of us had something special going on, and that it was going to get harder and harder for me to do living on Maui. So I knew I was going to come back to LA at some point. My family's here. My parents are here. All my first cousins, my aunts, my uncles, everyone is here. So I knew I was going to come back home at some point, but I just wasn't quite too sure when. And this was just that catalyst to get things rolling. And I remember calling them because in the high school level, we start already planning next year in February. So they start already creating all of the teaching lines in February. I called Leslie and Kevin, and I was kind of hyperventilating. I was like, okay, I have a retirement plan, and I have dental, and I have insurance, and I have, I have everything. I live on my own. I have my own place. So like, okay, are we going to do this? Because this means like I'm starting over back in LA. Like, and I wasn't quite too sure, is this the right move, the smart move? And they were just like, no, Dani, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. I said, okay, we're going to do this. And so I told my principal I wasn't coming back. Then I eventually moved back in July of 2019. And it was just amazing. Once we kind of understood that we were so interested in telling the stories that we have not been seeing this whole entire time, our stories, then the ball just kept on rolling. And it's been wonderful. It's been great. Then we had the pandemic, and that kind of changed things.
Wow.
Just in time for the pandemic.
Yes. As soon as we got our office situated, then we invested in this beautiful office space. And then no one could use it. We couldn't get together. We were separated, and it was really challenging for a while until we decided that, you know, we were going to be each other's pod, but that took a little bit of time. Y'all know in the very beginning, no one had any clue what was happening, right? So, yeah, but now things are picking up again. And I mean, Leslie and I spent the other day, we were up till 3:30 a.m. working on this application. And I just remember driving home being like, there was not one moment of that I didn't enjoy. You know, there was not one.
That's so sweet.
Same. It was
exhausted. We
a
were
lot of work, lot of work, but it was, we knew that, that it was important work. And I think when you kind of realize the work that you're doing is important to you, and it really means something, then you know that you're doing something well. You're doing something right.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. That's so beautiful. I love that.
Filmmaking is it's a long game. In documentary, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Like, you gotta just keep putting one foot in front of the other, hoping that you get to see a cast, a little bit of light coming through. And it's not an easy thing, but what we believe in is really important. And, you know, aside from the documentaries that keep kind of coming to us, there's been actually several other pitches in our community who have been trying to get us to jump on board with their docs. But, you know, the ones that we have at hand are kind of, we know that we have to focus and kind of bring these to life before we can move forward anywhere else. But we're excited about our scripted stuff too, you know, very excited about it. But, you know, and all of it has to do with representation in both our community and my husband's community, because he's Mexican. And so, which there's a, you know, big interlinking ideas and, you know, lots of common cultural similarities that we get to talk about and see that other people, that, you know, all our community can connect with, you know.
Hell yeah. I love this. So you're not at a loss for projects, it seems, because there's so many that we can do. So what can we highlight? What can we talk about right now? What is, you know, without, messing up for the future, what can we discuss and promote and highlight right now that in the near game, in the near future, that you want to, you know, bring to the table? We spoke about where you're from, like our initial question earlier. Can we speak a little bit on that series? Is that coming and where?
When Tina asked that, I was like, oh, how did she
I know, that was so weird. Tina, that was so weird, I have to say, because you're like, so where are you from? I was like, I know I didn't send any assets yet, because Kuya P told me I didn't. But I was like, oh man, how did you get that? Yeah.
I mean, your brain.
I know. It's we have a docuseries that we've been, you know, in research and development for a couple of years, and we just started doing principal photography now, going into it with, you know, a couple people that we have been, you know, had our pre-interviews with. But Where You From is a 4-part docuseries about Filipino, you know, kind of like Filipino immigration and
yes,
and our story, but with a highlight and we're exploring a little bit about the 80s and 90s and Filipino gangs and how our history from, you know, imperialism, Dani knows I've been wanting to say that word, and colonialism had led us to that part in our, you know, that of a couple, like 2.5 decades of what we went through as a community, and why these boys decided to do what they do, and then why Filipino gangs as a whole has dissipated and don't no longer exist. You know, so that's kind of what we've been exploring and what we are talking about in this docuseries.
Kuya P, you'd be stoked, because initially it was supposed to just be a 2-hour feature, just focusing on the gangs of LA in 80s and 90s, Filipino lens. And then the more that we went into it, the more that we started to explore, the more that we started to dig into how did we get there, then we're like, oh no, there's no way that we can tell this story just in a feature length film. We needed to actually start to go back into colonization, into decolonization.
Hell yeah.
What was happening at everything at that point in time, to the Manongs, to International Hotel, to, you know, to Rodney King, to O.J. Simpson, you know, all of these things that were happening that, like I was saying, when I was growing up and in the 90s and dancing, there was no, all the parties that I was at were getting shot up. People were getting killed in front of me. And that, to be honest, I mean, that was one of the things that kind of started to actually turn me away from the Filipino community, because I was mad. I was mad.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm tired of having to go to places and be so concerned about my safety and my friend's safety all the time, and that's kind of when I went to UCLA and started doing a different thing. So I'm trying to understand that. I'm trying to understand what was happening at that time and place, and then where are we now, so where we come from, where are we now? And so much of what we've been trying to understand is why a lot of other ethnic gangs are very multi-generational. But, Kuya P, this, having been in San Diego and San Francisco, the Bay Area, all of those homies, for the most part, I will say, and this is what we found, their kids, no way will they be in gangs. They're not in gangs. Those ex-bangers, no way are they going to let their kids be in a gang. Or most of them haven't even told their kids that they were in a gang. So there's a lot to unpack here, everyone, and we're stoked. We've been talking to a lot of people. If you all know anyone that you think we should be talking to, that's kind of what we're doing right now, is just gathering information, talking story, getting some archival footage. It's been really wonderful, really cool.
And it started with, us understanding and realizing where we grew up and trying to figure out why we in middle class Vescovina, and all these boys are like banging hard, shooting up parties and, all these things, but yet they're driving these really nice cars, living in these really nice houses. And what we realized was that was just one part of the story. And there was a whole nother story about this other community in the hi-fi district that didn't have the means that we did, that didn't have the access that we did, and why they needed to do what they did to protect themselves, and what their barcada was like. And, a lot of it started with Satanas, and so, we're kind of doing this study into who these are, how they ventured out into other people. We're not trying to glorify what happened, and we're not trying to demonize what they did. But it really has a sense of who we are as a community and what we were taught from the past, and how we got out of it because of our community. I where Dani taught, said a lot about like celebration and celebrating everything of who we are. There's a lot of things that we have to, our community needs to look at a mirror through. I love the idea of looking in a mirror and understanding our demons, understanding our past, and the things that we are ashamed of, that we didn't want to put in the forefront, and knowing that shame they shouldn't be ashamed about, because it is what has brought us. It has brought us to this point in our lives for what we experienced as an entire community, as a country, and we're not trying to point fingers at anybody, but we're trying to show the mirrors on all lives of like, this is what happens when a community can, when you support a community, and this is what happens when you don't. There's a lot to go into, and but we're super excited about this. Like Dani said, we were up so late, and it's been a long time since we had been in the office that late, but it was worth every second, trying to get this application and trying to work on this project, and just get the support outside of ourselves. We're self-funding our sizzle reel, but we definitely eventually we're hoping, if we don't sell it to a network, that we're going to be able to help raise funds ourselves, so that we can put it together ourselves too.
Hell yeah, I'm with that. And I definitely want to get back with you on this, off of this, to connect, because I have some friends that are working on a couple scripts that are speaking on this, in particular to the DJ scene that was around this, going back to Dani with the dance element, the DJs that were doing the DJing while this was going down. So I want to return to that, and hopefully we can connect. I want to see this happen, because it's a story that needs to be told. So in that regard to Philippine history, because that is part of our history. You said this a little bit, I think earlier, Dani, we grew up grew up in America, and we didn't know much of our history, and we're now, I think that's what you said, you're now learning your history through all this. And I'm assuming you as well, Leslie. Tina and Kat and I, we all did this ShoPowSho as well to learn ourselves, being that, all, the three of us are all mixed kids. My mom's Filipina and my dad's white. And so for me, I kind of dove into, being an old AOL adopter and being the old head, like, Dani, we're the same age. I was on Pinoy Pinay chat room back in the day on AOL to learn about our history as much as I can pull from that. And then, dive into what I could find, but it's hard. And that's why I'm so into this ShoPowSho that we're doing now, to tell our stories, to learn from each other and get information from each other so we can build and give that history. Because I have a young daughter who's 13 now, and I want her to know and learn from this show. So I commend y'all and thank y'all for helping, be, part of those individuals that are being instrumental to help give the road to the next generation. So I love what you're doing with this, and I can't wait to learn more and share more as this goes along. On that note, because I kind of got off track a little bit. So you're doing, you're diving into, and you're looking for people to help tell this story with this current documentary that you're working on. Are there any other stories that you're wanting to tell as well that you can speak on? Because again, I know you have some stuff in the works that you don't want to put out there too much. But are there any other Filipino stories that you want to tell?
Not that we can speak to as
Okay.
of right now, because they're still kind of in the works.
Yeah.
We have a limited series, and we acquired the rights to a novel called Life During Wartime with this amazing writer named Katie Rogan, and it really is about mental health and our veterans, which, gosh, I was thinking about a lot this weekend.
That's me.
Really? Oh yeah, that's right, because military.
Yeah.
Were you in the military as well, Kuya P?
Yeah, Navy, 4 years, fourth generation. And that's a whole shoot. We can talk on that too. That's a whole nother set.
Absolutely. And mainly directed towards the women in the military and sexual assault. And even though we know 1000% that men are being sexually assaulted in the military as well, but how we need to be, how just under this administration, things are starting to change and shift about how victims, survivors get to tell their story. Yeah. And so that's huge. And so we have a limited series that's based on that IP, and we're taking it out with Kevin Alejandro, our producing partner, my brother-in-law, Leslie's husband, to star in. So that's really exciting. And it's telling it through a very Latinx lens, which has been really, really important to us to be able to integrate those cultural components and aspects of being Mexican American into this story. We have the other documentary that Leslie initially brought me into, and that's what really got me over here, is called Book of Scars. And that's about looking at how women heal in relationship to other women when it comes to physical scars. And we know that men usually get really praised for the scars that are on their body because it makes them look a little bit more badass. Women are taught that if there's any type of blemish, any type of thing wrong with them that you can see, then they have to try to hide it or be ashamed about it. And so we're through Leslie's photography, she's taking photos of women and their and in relationship to other women, and it's really just been a beautiful journey about healing in community. And we talk a lot about kapwa when it comes to what healing means, especially as Filipinas, like how we as Filipinas heal is usually with each other, which is really a beautiful sentiment. So anything else, Leslie, that I'm missing?
No, I mean, yeah, like, we do have, a couple feature scripts that we're still developing. We have a lot of developing stuff, with just the three of us, it has not been easy. Oh, we are looking for interns, if anybody is interested as well. With three of us kind of on board trying to do everything, it's not been the easiest to kind of be on top of everything, but we're trying to do our best to do it and get it going. Dani is the definite superpower of the whole group, because her organization and organizational and juggling skills are definitely needed in this company.
Leslie, you missed the first part of this conversation when I told him I have 10 to-do lists and, and I'm struggling, trying to stay organized. So cat's out of the bag. I'm still having issues.
She's so good. I know it's so funny though, because when we get to the office, she's been putting up a piece of paper with our to-do list for the day. And at first Kevin and I have to look at it and just take a deep breath because our anxiety gets to us about the things we do. And then we're like, okay, it's there. Let's just get to work. It's amazing. And she keeps us in check, and we couldn't do it without her. So, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of it. I think with every aspect of everything that we are doing, also mental health is definitely, involved in all of our projects too, especially within the Filipino and the Latinx community, because it's not something that is really talked about either. And so, we have a bit of that, mixed in with these stories as well. So, I think that's all that we can talk about right now.
No worries.
That we definitely have in the mix. If we have other things, we promise to send it your way.
Hell yeah, we definitely want to have you come back. I had to ask you though, so why is that so important to you? If you can answer that individually, why is it so important for you to tell that? Because we each kind of have like our own reason. Maybe, before our second to last question, why is it so important for you, Leslie and Kevin, to put that into your work, and then for you as well, Dani?
Are you talking about mental health?
Yeah, mental health. And then I was looking also at your bio, being involved with the human rights campaign, and just creating a better world through the work, and just, it's just not all about entertainment, which we all love to be entertained, but just, we want to leave them with something. And I think I caught earlier, Leslie, your mother as well, why do you do it for your work? I know my own reason why with like ShoPowSho for my daughter, but for you, what is your particular reason to like leave as kind of like a life lesson as well, and why you're doing what you're doing along with your husband?
I want to do things for others to be seen. I want to do things for others to reflect. And I use the mirror analogy because I do a lot of reflecting, and it's tough work. It's really tough work to understand your flaws and then accept them, and then move on from them and figure out how to change what you think needs to be changed. I do it because I want my son to, he's a Filipino Mexican boy living in this world. He's a brown boy living in this world with a big afro. And I want him to see that. I want him to know that he can be seen, and that he can have confidence in who he is, and he doesn't have to be, have Euro Anglo features to succeed, and that he can succeed with having a compassionate heart. And I'm hoping that the stories that we tell will reflect that, and he can see in himself in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And for you, Dani?
I think for us, in order to, I was having a hard day yesterday. I really was, with the news and everything that's been going on in the world. And that really does give me an opportunity. And Leslie knows this. I came to her house yesterday, pretty much almost in tears, just being like, I need to take a step back and try to understand what is happening. And then, of course, how not to get caught up in the despair. Our world needs a lot of healing, everyone. It really does. We need to heal. And I'm a yogi, I'm a meditator, and I honestly do believe that healing begins with us individually. So in order for me to heal the world, I have to start with who I am. And I believe that education, and I believe that conversations and that storytelling is a big part of that. So this is the reason I do what I do, is because I feel like I've learned some of my biggest life lessons. I've been challenged immensely by things that I've read or seen or experienced in theater and the movie theater and on the television screen, through other people's stories. And that's where I feel like healing takes place, is when I'm watching things, experiencing things that challenge my beliefs, my understandings, my limited understandings. And they're very, very limited, right? So I'm all about trying to expand my mind, expand my heart. And when it comes down to it, as cheesy as it sounds, I believe that it's love. Like I love people. I love the world. I love my sister. I love my brother-in-law. I love our community. And I know that in the work that we're doing, which I really do believe is good work, is really about healing through love.
Hell yeah, I love it. And so I wanted to start doing this. The Ates don't know this, but the reason why I wanted y'all to answer that question is, if anything, when you listen to the playback on this interview and you hear these last few words, it'll remind you why you're doing what you're doing. And I can't thank you enough for doing what you're doing and helping change the world. Yeah, because I want to cry right now, but it just, because I need, it's just, you need, and sometimes crying is good. You know what I'm saying? It helps inspire you and motivates you and pushes you forward. And hopefully when you listen to this playback, you'll be like, okay, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. So let me throw it to Kat before I cry and before you cry, for her to give the last question. Go ahead, Kat.
All right, let's end it on a happy note. So we are partnered with the NOC, the Nerds of Color. So we always like to end with a little nerd check. So what is it that you are super nerdy about? What is something that if you were given the space for a TED Talk, you could go tomorrow? What is it that you're passionate about?
Oh, dang, Dani, you go first.
If you ever get stuck in life and don't know the answer, Buffy the Vampire Slayer will answer all your questions, and you can find all of life's answers in Buffy.
What's your favorite episode?
Oh man, that is so
or a favorite episode. You could just give me a favorite episode.
A favorite episode. Oh my gosh. Which one is the one that I talk about the body a lot. I talk about the end where they can't, it's season 4 and they can't, no, this is the Riley season. So season 4 and they can't speak. They finally are able to talk and they have nothing to say because communication is so am I allowed to cuss on here? It's so effing hard. Yeah, I could go on and on about my faves, but those are
fantastic. Love to hear it. Awesome. Leslie?
I'm horror films and thrillers.
Yes.
Those I love. I love horror. I love thrillers. I love the space of I love writing and reading and seeing things when it comes to monsters and not necessarily the monsters that scare us, but the monsters that we have inside ourselves and exploring those, because we're not perfect. And those kinds of ideas are very fascinating to me. So, mirrors and monsters. I think I should write something about that. Right?
Yeah, that sounds beautiful. I love that. The monster was, the humans were the monster all along, right?
Right, exactly. I love those. I love twists. I love jump scares. My husband and my son, they hate watching scary movies with me because it's not the scary movies that scare them. It's me that grabs all of them when the jump scares happen or my scream, and they're like, "Why did you do that?" But I love it. I love that stuff, and you know, there are definitely several features that we're working on that live in that space. We all three of us, we're definitely fans of it, and I know. And whenever we have ideas and people are, like, well, how about this and that? And I'm like, but how can we make it scary? how can we freak everybody out? Yeah. So, I mean, I the idea of living in fear, or having those kinds of fears, I think say a lot about our humanity and what, and how we deal with fear, right? From any aspect. And so that's why it's super fascinating to me. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Oh yeah, no, I love it. Oh, standing ovation. I actually have a podcast, Keeping It Creepy with Cherry and Kat, that we talk about horror movies and review them and break things down from like a woman of color perspective.
Yes, I love it. I'm writing a thriller, feature that just kind of speaks about, from a woman's perspective as well, and raising her son. I think as being stuck with my 12 to 13-year-old during the pandemic,
Oh yeah, that's a layer of horror.
Need to write all about it, but my goal is to cast a Filipina in that role, and without having to talk about her being Filipina, because
hell yeah.
A Philam can be just have these mental issues like any other American.
Just as creepy as that.
Yes, Yes, absolutely. Look, any
Exactly.
project you write as a Filipino is going to be a Filipino project, even if it doesn't explicitly reference the culture, right? So I support
Boom.
100%.
Hell
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
I love it. I love it. I can't wait to hear more about these projects we have coming, where I'm from. All these projects, just amazing. Please keep in touch with us. Let us know what's going down. We want to show it love and light and continue to celebrate you guys. Thank you for allowing us to give at least this snapshot of the journey. And we want you back to talk about the other projects as they come along. This was a lot of fun, y'all.
Anytime, you guys are so amazing. What you guys are doing are fantastic, and it's always a great time with you guys. So thank you for having us.
Definitely. One last thing is, for the people that are listening, our audio listeners, I'm going to have the information in the description below, but can you tell people how they can reach out to you? Alejandro Films, any socials or anything we want to throw at them?
Yes,
Good.
our Instagram is, the handle is Alejandro Films _. We do have a Facebook. I think it is also just Alejandro Films. I can be reached at Dani@alejandrofilms.com. And my Insta is Dani Deje, DEJE. And that's the first 4 letters of my last name.
Awesome.
Yeah, check us out also at www.alejandrofilms.com. I can be reached at Leslie@alejandrofilms.com. You can also check out my Instagram at Leslie Alejandro, at Twitter, actually Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at Leslie Alejandro.
Awesome. We're going to shoot you all these follows. We're going to do all that, and we're going to keep in touch, and we're going to continue to celebrate the amazing Leslie and Dani. Thank you guys for coming on and joining us. Appreciate y'all so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Have a good one. Take care.
Boom. There you go. Leslie and Dani, formerly DeJesus. Just one DeJesus now. Leslie Alejandro, Dani DeJesus, the amazing DeJesus sisters. Wow. I loved it. Just all the gems, all the energy, all the vibe, what they're all about, what they're doing, what they want to do for the world, for their seed and their future generations. Just so beautiful. Just amazing. Love it.
Mm-hmm. It was really cool because you know how we always love to experience or to explore people's different experiences as Filipino Americans, and it was really cool to see the differences in their stories. You know, even as sisters, they went on totally different paths, and then were able to come together to start this production company and tell our stories. So that was really cool.
Oh yeah. I want to give you props. You asked one of the best questions. Tell me about your sister, and you tell me about your sister. That was a good one. I was waiting for something like that.
That was my Gemini side coming out. I wanted a little bit of tea, and I got it.
Yes.
But it's lovely to hear how their experiences differed so much, even though they grew up in the same place with the same family with only a 3-year age difference. Yeah. But they ended up with very different paths that sort of led them back to the same place. We're both working under the Alejandro Studios, right? So I just think it's really interesting how our meandering paths lead us to where we're supposed to be, and you are picking up lessons along the way. So even if you're not getting that formal training, you're not getting that college degree, you're still getting the necessary life education for your skills, right?
Hell yeah. And to you, and Tina, you brought the great point too as well, that it doesn't matter, where it goes, it was meant for a reason. And then the build up to where she's at now and determining what she wanted to do. And even if you're the oldest person in the room, you come at it with a whole nother lens and experience that just was beautiful, and then them coming together. I loved it. This was such a fun one. And
there are many different paths, and it's never too late to start.
Hell yeah. That's a great way to end this off. So we would love your path to intersect with ours. So we want you to reach out to us. So Kat, how can they reach out to you, and what else do we got going on?
Well, you can reach me personally at Kataphorric on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. We also have a ShoPowSho TikTok. If you'd like a little more behind the scenes, you can support us on Patreon or just buy us a coffee.
There you go. Tina.
And I am Viva Valentina. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at viva.valentina. And I'm also on Twitter and chess.com at Viva Valentina XO.
Yes, mahakita to my amazing ates. I love you both so very much. Make sure you follow Kataphorric and Viva Valentina. For your boy, Kuya P, you can follow me at Strange Since 1977, as well as at Temple Far East over on TikTok, which is the legend Kuya P. I haven't posted in a minute, but I'm going to try and figure out something or some cool dancers. I don't know. I got to do better on the TikTok. Also, the Nerds of Color, which is the home of ShoPowSho, where we give you that POC representation within pop culture. And of course, at the NRW and at New Release Wednesday, where nerds rule the world with all of my squad over there. And of course, also the home of ShoPowSho as well. For Kataphorric, Viva Valentina, Mahakita, Salamat. I need some sleep because I'm stumbling on my words. We're out of here with all the love. Mahakita, Salamat. Boom.
Hey everyone, my name is Dani DeJesus and I am a producer at Alejandro Films, and I'm excited to be on the ShoPowSho, so I hope you check us out.
Hi, I'm Leslie Alejandro. I am a producer-director at Alejandro Films, and we're excited to be on the ShoPowSho. Hi, I'm Leslie Alejandro.
Hi everyone, I'm Dani DeJesus, and we're part of Alejandro Films.
Yes, we are. And I am proud of my Filipino heritage because it's who I am, where I come from, where my family comes from, and it's all I've got. So I love who I am and I love where I come from. So that's why I'm proud.
Similarly, I'm very proud of my Filipino heritage because it is at my core everything who I am. It's everything that I understand this world to be. And what's cool about it is that the understanding just continues to grow and grow and grow. So super proud to be Filipina, super proud to connect with more Filipinos. And we're just so stoked to be part of the show. Hey everyone, Dani DeJesus here.
And I'm Leslie Alejandro.
And I'm a producer at Alejandro Films.
And I am a writer, director, producer at Alejandro Films. And we are so excited to be part of the ShoPowSho.